All right, you crazy mathematicians. All right, we are going to do some meeting level factoring as promised in the last video. So here we are. We have 4 terms, and the reason why I know they're 4 terms is these are all multiplications. There's a minus sign. That's all multiplication minus, and there's the constant. So what that means is I have 4 different terms. The greatest common factor between 32, 28, 24, and 21 is there's nothing. This is an odd number. These are all even. So there's no greatest common factor. They don't all have a v. So this isn't a greatest common factor. So we said we had 4 terms. We can't do a greatest common factor, so we're going to go ahead and do factor by grouping. So we're going to look at these ones and these ones. So we are going to do a greatest common factor between 32v cubed minus 28v squared. And the greatest common factor, okay, so we can pull out a 4v squared, right? Because 4 can go into both of these. So 4 times 8v would get me that. And 4v squared times a negative 7 will get me that. So we have that. So then let's do 24 and 21. So we have negative 24v plus 21. Right there. Okay, this number is negative, so whatever I factor out, I need to factor out a negative. And it looks like 3 is going to be the greatest thing that will come out of that. So we're going to pull out a negative 3. So negative 3 times a positive 8v will get me that. And negative 3 times a negative 7 will get me that. Well, now the second step that we have to think about when we're factor by grouping, this number and this number, they have to match. And they do, so we know we did it right. So now we're going to do 4v squared times 8v minus 7. And then we just write the next one, negative 3 times 8v minus 7. So now we have one term here, because this is all multiplication, and the only minus sign is right here. And then we have one term here, because this is all multiplication. And so we are going to do a greatest common factor one more time. So remember when we're factoring by grouping, we do a GCF, and then we're going to do a GCF. So the greatest common factor between this is this one and this one, that whole in quantity. So we're going to pull out an 8v minus 7. So 8v minus 7 times 4v squared is what I'm going to need there. Sorry, I forgot to put a line there so you can see the 2 terms. 8v minus 7 times a negative 3 will give me that. So that our final answer, we think, will be, you still have to check it, 4v squared minus 3. And let's see, we've got an 8 and a 7. Okay, nope, none of this is going to factor any further. And these are perfect squares. This is a minus sign, but this is not a perfect square. So we are finally done. So this is going to be our final answer. Okay, so now we have a trinomial here. A trinomial because this is one term, this is one term, and this is one term. 3 terms, trinomial. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to check to see for a greatest common factor. I'm always going to check that. 2 and 5 and 42 have nothing in common. 5 is prime, 2 is prime. 2 could go into 42, but nothing can go, 5 can't go into anything. So we do not have a greatest common factor there. I'm going to go ahead and take that back off. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, since I have 3 terms, I'm going to do box and diamond. I'm going to set up my box the same way that I set it up every single time. So I have my first term, which is 2x squared, my last term, which is negative 42y squared, and my middle term, which is negative 5xy. So we need to multiply negative 42 times 2, which is a negative 84x x squared y squared. Now that shouldn't scare you. The reason why it shouldn't scare you is because we have an xy here, which means we're going to need an xy here, and that's going to work. So then we need to figure out our factors of 84 and that have a difference, and are going to have a difference of 5, right? So we have 1 and 84, 2, and we already said that was 42. Does 3 go in 84? Let's find out. I'm not actually sure. Okay, yep, 3 and 28. 4 and 21. I'm going to skip 5 because that's not going to work. 6 and 14. So far, none of these have a difference of 5. This has a difference. Nope, not quite. So we have 7 and 12. Now that one has a difference of 5, right? 7 and 12. If I make one of those negative, if I make the 12 negative, that would add up to negative 5. So we're going to do 7 and negative 12. So 7 and negative 12. So I'm going to go ahead and put negative 12 xy right here and 7 xy right there. So 2 and 12, negative 12, have a 2 in common because we're going to do a greatest common factor, and they both have an x. So I'm actually going to do 2x. So 2x times x gives me a 2x squared. 2x times negative 6y will give me a negative 12xy. And x times a positive 7 will give me a negative, oh, nope, I need a y here. So x times 7y will give me a 7xy. And then just to make sure we got our answer right, if we multiply 7y times negative 6y, we will get a negative 42y. So then we can go ahead and write our answers. So we have 2x plus 7y. And then we have x minus 6y. And then we can check, and none of those factor any further. There's no greatest common factor, and these aren't perfect squares. So we are done. So our final answer for this one would be that. So that is factoring, doing box and diamond with a trinomial with 2 variables. Okay, so we are going to do this one. We are going to do a greatest common factor because that's what we always start with. I can see that both 50 and 32 are even, so I can divide by at least 2. So, and then they both don't have an a, so 2 is the greatest common factor between those. So 2 times 25, a to the 4th, and then 2 times a negative 16. So then my answer is going to be 2 times 25, a to the 4th, minus 16. Now I need to check and to see if I can factor any further. 2 is done. So then I need to look at these. Is 25, I have 2 terms, so I need to know if I'm going to do a difference of squares or a sum and difference of cubes. Is 25 a perfect square? Yes. Is a to the 4th a perfect square? Yes. I know that because this power is an even number, and if it's an even number, if I can divide it by 2, then I know that it's a perfect square. Is this a minus sign? Yes. Is this a perfect square? Is 16 a perfect square? Yes. So then what I need to do is I need to do the square root of 25, a to the 4th, and I need to do the square root of 16. So again, my answer for 2 stays part of it. I'm going to have a parenthesis, a plus, and a minus, and I just have to figure out what I'm going to put in those blanks. Again, whatever's in this blank will be the same here, and the same blank here and here. So this is actually the square root of 25 times the square root of a to the 4th. Well, the square root of 25 is 5, and half of 4, so that's what we're doing when we take the square root of a number. We're going to take it is a squared, and the square root of 16 is 4. So I took half of 4, and that's how I got a squared. So my first one is 5a squared, 5a squared, and then I have 4 here and 4 here. Now I just have to check to see if this is factorable. Well, 5 is not a perfect square or a perfect cube, so that one is done. So then that one is done. So we are done, and my final answer is this. So now we're going to do this one. So again, we need to check to see if there is a greatest common factor. 125 and 27. Nope, I don't think so. U and V. Nope, nope. So there is no greatest common factor. So now we have two different terms. So is 125 a perfect square? No. No, that doesn't work. Is 125 a perfect cube? Yes. Is U cubed a perfect cube? Yes. Is 27 a perfect cube? Yes. Is V cubed a perfect cube? Yes. So we're going to do a sum and difference of perfect cubes. So the first thing we're going to do is take the cubed root of 125 U cubed and the cubed root of 27 V cubed. I'm going to rewrite that so it's the cubed root of 125 times the cubed root of U cubed. And this is going to be the cubed root of 27 times the cubed root of V cubed. Again, those are the same thing. I'm just rewriting them so I remember that I need to take the cubed root of this number and the cube root of that number. 1 second, my lights just turned off. You ever walk by my classroom and I'm sitting in the dark? It's because my lights turn off on me all the time, and I have to walk all the way across the room to get the lights to turn on. Anyway, so the reason why I break them up is to remind myself that I'm going to take the cube root of the coefficient and the variable. The coefficient and the variable. So the cubed root of 125 is 5, and the cube root of U cubed is just U. The cube root of 27 is 3, and the cube root of V cubed is V. So this is my first term, and this is my second term. I have to set up my parentheses and get my signs in there. So I have a binomial, and then I have a trinomial. So I'm giving myself some space. I keep my sign the same, and then I change the sign. I end on a positive note. I square the first term, square the last term, and both go in the middle. And since I already figured out what my first term is and my second term, I can go ahead and put that in. So I have 5U, 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 and then 3V, 3V, 3V. The only thing we have left in this problem is to simplify. And since we know that there was no greatest common factor, we know our answer is not going to be able to factor any further, because when we do a sum and difference, this is a sum of perfect cubes, we're going to get an answer that's not further factorable. So we have 5U plus 3V times, now remember 5U squared is really 5U times 5U. So that gives me 25U squared. Negative 5U times, negative 5, so 5 times 3 is 15, and then U times V is UV, and then 3V again is 3V times 3V, which is a positive 9V squared. And that, my friends, is going to be the final answer. So that was a sum of perfect cubes with two variables. Alright, that was all I have for you guys. Please ask questions. Please reach out to me if you need any help. The test is on Tuesday or Monday, depending on what day or what period you are going to be taking, what period you take this class. But please reach out to me, Swadley, reach out to me. I hope you have a great weekend. Do study, get that homework done, do all the practice problems. Make sure you have 100%. If you got an answer wrong, hit similar question and repeat it until you get one right. Do get the practice done. Have a great day. You guys are all amazing and wonderful mathematicians. I will see you on Zoom on Monday.